folks, welcome to the Rain channel. Today I am joined by a trusted partner of the Real Estate Investment Network, Keith Uti of Mortgage Alliance and Enrich Mortgage. We are going to do a kind of a mortgage update, if you will. We're going to cover what the changes by OSFI are going to mean to investors, deposits versus mortgage impact, for example, the mortgage changes that are being made that really matter to us as investors, especially for the rental property mortgage renewals, which some of us are now bumping into. And what are the options that investors have if they're kind of getting these taken off the table? And then, if we have enough time, we're going to get a bit of a mortgage market update with what's going on specifically in Alberta and Edmonton. Keith, thanks for joining me on the Rain channel.
Hey, you're welcome, Patrick. A pleasure to be here, and always happy to let the Rain members and the broader public know a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes that they just don't hear about.
Yeah, well, I think it's important for everybody to understand that, there is a lot of changes in the mortgage world, over, when you look at what's happening, there's a lot of conversations about rising rates. Are they going to go higher? Are they going to come down? What is it? Where is the end in sight, if you will, in terms of mortgage interest rates? But that's only a part of the equation. In behind the scenes, to your point, we know that OSFI has made some changes, or at least are talking about some changes, which is going to impact investors in terms of what they need to put down. It's going to impact investors in terms of how they need to qualify. So why don't we take on OSFI first, kind of give us the background of what OSFI is doing. First off, who they are, and then what it is that they're doing, why are they doing it, and what does it mean to us?
Yeah, so OSFI, the Office of Superintendent of Financial Institutions. So although they are supposedly separate from the government and make their own informed decisions, they are following direction from what the government sees as far as the risks of people taking on too much debt. And what shows that people are taking on too much debt other than rising interest rates, right? Mm-hmm. And so unfortunately, mortgages are lumped into what they see as the debt that people are taking on in Canada, which is not always comparison to other countries. So one, be aware of that when you see those numbers. Mm-hmm. But what they do is they set policy for the main lenders and what they need to follow as far as things such as how much do they need to hold in deposits versus what they are lending out in mortgages. So there's a ratio that they...
Yeah, but let's just unpack that one layer deeper, which is, let's keep it really simple, which is to say, OSFI is saying, hey, bank, there's some risks out there. I want you to have more cash available. I want you to increase your reserve fund. Is that Correct. A simplified way to say what you're saying?
Absolutely. That is a good simplified way to say it. They want them to have more cash deposits available based on what they're lending. And so what does that mean? Well, why does it impact you as a borrower? Well, what it means is that in order for the bank to make the same amount of return for its investors, they need to increase their interest rates to make up for the fact that they can lend out less money based on the amount of deposits they have. Mm-hmm. So the long-term effect of this is that the viewpoint from those that believe interest rates are going to come down, they need to adjust their thinking. That also includes that they're not going to come down as much as they once would have, because this is the second time that OSFI has lowered this leverage
increased reserves. They told the banks, wasn't it about a year ago, they told the banks increase your reserves. So part of that is to reduce risk to the bank. That's what it's all about. They're anticipating that there's going to be perhaps some bad debt coming with mortgages that maybe collapse and or people not being able to pull them off. That is in fact actually happening, starting to increase. Numbers I saw today was year over year, it's up about 8% of what people not paying. So that's not saying they're going into foreclosure yet, but you can probably anticipate that there will be happening. So and then one layer of clarity in all in all of this as well, Keith, I think is important for listeners to understand, is that, to your point, because the bank has to have more money tied up, sitting there doing nothing, they increase interest rates to get a better return on that capital. Call it lost opportunity cost, I guess, is really what I'm hearing you saying in all of that. And so that interest rate does play a part. I think we need to clarify too, is that neither you or I think that interest rates are going to come back down to, 2% or 2.5%. We'd probably be high-fiving if in the next 18 months or 2 years, they're back down into the low fours or maybe even 4%. I don't know what's your view on that, Keith?
Well, with these changes, I think that we will be hard pressed to see conventional uninsured mortgage rates to push below 4.5%.
Yeah.
So because the spread that the banks are taking between high ratio insured mortgages and conventional uninsured mortgages right now is in the range of about 0.7%. That's what the spread is. So if high ratio insured mortgages get to 3.75, well, that means their conventionals are going to be 4.45. So I think we're going to be hard pressed to get below that 4.5% on conventional uninsured mortgages going forward, as we do see. And so that leads to a whole nother level of conversations I have with clients when we're talking about what do you do?
So you're talking in that case, you're talking about the posted overnight rate, right? So in other words, when it comes to getting a mortgage, you'd still be in that 5.5-6% range, given those numbers. Am I interpreting that correctly? Or
yeah. So I'm talking. So that representation was the fixed rate. That was a fixed rate representation. As far as the prime lending rate, well, even the prime lending rate, if the prime lending rate even comes down 2% now, we're at 5.2. You're still going to be in the mid to high fours on conventional versus high ratio. So I think we have to be careful.
Again, far better than 6.38. So now here's I'll give you my insight. Like I don't have a lot of mortgages that are renewing per se, and the ones that are very, very low because of course I just the age of my portfolio. But I do have one, and something, I made a call just yesterday, I think it was, and I was looking at the 2 and 3 year rate, and although they're lower, I looked at the 1 year fixed, and I don't remember what it was. It was 6.7 or something, 6.5. I don't remember what a 1 year closed fixed was. And I went, something, I'm going to roll the dice. The mortgage isn't huge. And quite frankly, I think that there'll be I think it'll come down a little bit over the next year. I'm not anticipating a lot, by the way, so let's be clear about that. But I just didn't see locking that money in closing for 2 or 3 years. Anyways, that's my view of it. What's yours? What's your view of it, Keith?
Well, I tell you what, a 6.7 on a 1 year, if that's what they offered you, that's pretty darn good compared to where the rest of the market is right now. So,
got it.
So in that case, it likely made sense because the 3 year was probably not really that much better. And so in that case, it likely, that roll of the dice made sense for you because it was such small. When you start to see that spread be 0.5% or greater between the different fixed rate options, that's when we have to start doing some further calculations with clients to make sure that they're making the best informed decision that they can on what they want to do.
These are interesting times, to say the least. So let's look at back and say, okay, what does this mean to investors, for example, given the changes that are happening in mortgages? What do we need to know as investors right now? Because going to the bank and getting capital as an investor has not gotten easier. It has again gotten more challenging. But give us some insights into what's going on in detail there, Keith.
Yeah, so one of the ones that's going to impact many people who have readvanceable mortgages or have a mortgage and a separate HELOC, because there's people that have those, is the change that's coming as of October 31st, where the government is implementing limitations on the percentage of what the readvanceable portion of your mortgage can be. So as an example, and not every lender is impacted the same. Every lender might have their readvanceable mortgage set up differently or in different manners. Yeah. So what this means is that a lender who previously said, well, we'll advance you up to 80% and 65% of that can be converted to a HELOC. Well, now it used to be if you paid off $1,000 in principal a month, $1,000 would go towards the pay down on your principal.
Yep.
Now that's going to be a percentage of that $1,000 that goes towards the principal, and the other percentage is going to go towards is going to just be principal paid, and you're not going to get that full $1,000 to reinvest, because they don't want they want to make sure that investors are paying down on these mortgages. What's interesting though is that of the home equity lines of credit that are out there in Canada, only 30% of them even are carrying a balance. But yet the government is targeting these. There could be other political reasons that they're doing this, but we won't go there, Patrick, because you and I could go really deep.
We could.
So, but like, for example, I just got a letter from Scotia in the mail that told me what the revision to my step mortgage is on one of my rental properties, and what the impact is, and what I'm going to see. So, you have to be aware of that. So where this comes into play is for investors that want to use home equity lines of credit for down payment and stuff. If they're planning ahead, they need to now plan ahead with an adjusted view of what that's going to look like, because they're not maybe be getting. Some lenders are already set up in a specific way that this is not going to really impact the way they were already set up, but others it is. So you just have to know. And credit unions don't have to abide by this. However, they generally do follow.
Okay, so let's, I want to tighten this all up and clean this, because I know that for some listeners, this is going to be Greek of what we're trying to share with them. And so I guess the Coles notes of it, if I'm going to keep this really simple, is this, folks, is that right now, do not, and I can't stress this enough, don't limit yourself to walking in the door of any of the standalone financial institutions, the big five, the credit unions. I just am going to tell you that I believe strongly, and I have a lot of evidence for it, is that your best move is to reach out to a broker like Keith. Now, consider that they have way more options. They understand what each bank is doing, and then they can take a look at your overarching portfolio, your overarching financial situation, what it is you're working backwards from, and then start to play the game, play the chess game of saying, okay, how do we want to put this in place for you? So I want to just kind of get it back to this. Now, you talked about credit unions, you talked about what banks are doing, you talked about I've lost the term out of my brain.
Readvanceable mortgages.
Readvanceable mortgages, the changes that are happening there. So it's all to say this: reach out to a qualified investor-focused mortgage broker. Keith, of course, is a trusted partner, so we're saying reach out to Keith and let him guide you through that. Okay, final topic that we got to talk to. Is there any other options for those investors who are bumping up against the wall? Is there any kind of, are you seeing a path that is going to make it easier for investors today, or are we looking down the road going, listen, hang on tight, do what you can, negotiate the best deals you can, and we'll do what we can to get you financing? Any kind of words of wisdom there, Keith?
So I think, there can be a handful of options that an investor may have on a property, depending on factors. One, who is the current mortgage with? Is it a collateral charge? That can lead to the options on the possibility of doing a transfer of that mortgage and a reamortization versus a refinance. They could possibly be, if that property was a former primary residence and has an existing insurable mortgage, that leads to different options. If it's just a single unit and they've had it for a long time, well, maybe a refinance and increasing the amortization makes sense. And in some situations, maybe actually refinancing with a B lender on a 1 or a 2 year term makes sense for them, because that's what's going to just help them bring that payment down so that they are cash flow at least cash flow even, but hopefully cash flow positive. So we have to look at each person's situation on its own. But the options will vary depending on that. But we're looking at these from a perspective of what makes sense. I just before we started today, talked to a client. They're purchasing a rental property, has an existing illegal suite. we're going to be able to do that one as an insurable mortgage with 25-year AM at a 5.89 versus a conventional 6.49,
Wow.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Over 30 years. And that's going to save on cash, big savings on cash flow. And we're looking at the 3-year versus 5 years as well, and that's a further calculation they're going to do to determine. But these are things that we're looking at as different options and alternatives in this market that can make things better. And I mean, 5.89 sounds high to somebody who's only got involved in the mortgage market in the last 5 to maybe 8 years. But for anybody that's been in it longer, I mean, we were buying rental properties in the 2000s with rates high 5s, low 6s, high 6s. So,
Sure.
It
all stays relative. I think what I really want to, again, emphasize here is that there are solutions out there for investors, but there's no doubt that you have to surround yourself with the right team. And that is an investor-focused mortgage broker, investor-focused realtor, making sure that the lawyer, the accounting, that all you have is investor-focused, understanding what's going on in today's market. So as we wind this up, Keith, I look at what's happening in Calgary. Calgary remains strong in terms of even pricing, given that listings are not going off the charts and there's a lot of inventory out there that continues to be a problem. As a province, you've got a lot of immigration going into the province, many of them landing in Calgary. However, there's what is often referred to, not my view, as Calgary's uglier sister, which is Edmonton. What have you got to say about what's going on in Edmonton and maybe some other, let's say regions, cities, whether it be Lethbridge, Grand Prairie, anything else? What's your kind of view of what's going on in the market? Is it getting softer? Are prices coming off? What do you see?
I haven't seen prices coming off. Your appraisals have all been pretty good. The only place, there's one segment of the market where I've seen prices come off a bit, and that is in the fourplex market. So clients, give you a prime example. Clients sold a fourplex it was a suited legal duplex, sold it in the spring for 1.2 or 1.25, can't remember. Same clients had purchased a similar property just around the corner off of the main drag, did the same thing to it, got it appraised 4 months later, only appraised at 950.
Wow, interesting.
Because the comparable sales that were available, that one was now out of date. It was beyond the 90-day timeline, and there were enough sales within that 90-day period that one gets pushed out. And I've now seen 3 other fourplexes, whether they be a legal fourplex or a suited duplex that's legally suited, all come in that 900 to 950 range. In the last bit. So that one, I would say we've seen that price point soften a bit. And maybe that's because there were some old investors that were just like, you know what, let's sell this. I'm going to make off. I'm out. And if I get 900, I'm getting almost $1 million, I'm good. And so that can hurt. So that's the one segment. But as far as like suited single family homes, 620, Southwest Calgary, Glamorgan area, $621,000 to buy a illegally suited bungalow type house that needs 62K of renos. So we're not. So I wouldn't say we're seeing any softening that way, but certainly our condo market is a complete flip flop of where it was 5 years ago. I mean, that market segment is up 14%.
That's in Calgary. That's in Calgary. Yeah,
that's in Calgary. Edmonton condo market. Soft. It's still kind of flat.
It will be soft forever. Stay out of that Edmonton condo market as an investor. Do not go there. And if you're even investing in condos in Calgary, be very, very cautious. Make sure you're working with a realtor that knows that area. Can't stress that enough. The Calgary market has some really good potential upside in the condo market if you know where and what it is you're buying. Make no mistake. And I say that to some of the Ontario investors, because they're looking at that condo market in Alberta. They're going, wow, this is cheap. Give me 3. Because it's relative to what's going on in Toronto, in the GTA, et cetera. You cannot compare the two regions. Different culture, different mindset around condo living. And I just wanted to point that out. Keith, thank you, as always, for your time and the insights that you bring. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been a great update around what's happened in the mortgage world. Keith, thanks very much.
Hey, thank you, Patrick. It was a pleasure being here, and I look forward to just helping bring knowledge.
The next time. Okay. Thanks, Bill.
You bet.